ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ महागणपतये नमः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैस्तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम नमस्ते गणपतये त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं तत्त्वमसि त्वमेव केवलं कर्तासि त्वमेव केवलं धर्तासि त्वमेव केवलं हर्तासि त्वमेव सर्वं खल्विदं ब्रह्मासि त्वं साक्षादात्मासि नित्यं ऋतं वच्मि सत्यं वच्मि अवत्वं माम् अववक्तारम् अवश्रोतारम् अवधातारम् अवधातारम् अवानूचानमवशिष्यम् अवपश्चात्तात् अवपुरस्तात् अवोत्तरात्तात् अवदक्षिणात्तात् अवचोर्ध्वात्तात् अवाधरात्तात् सर्वतो मां पाहि पाहि समन्तात्। We were looking at the first vakya, त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं तत्त्वमसि. So here Ganapati is being looked upon as the one who is a manifestation of Omkara. Of course, that is already there. Omkara Swarupa, his very form indicates Omkara, and Om itself is a sound symbol, okay, for both what we call Saguna Brahma and Nirguna Brahma. Nirguna Brahma means Brahman as it is. Saguna Brahma means to teach this Brahman. We are deliberately superimposing certain qualities onto Brahman. That is called Adhyaropa. So Adhyaropa means what? Deliberate superimposition of certain qualities which are not there. Okay. And then Apavada. Later on we'll negate that, so that then you understand whatever is not left out is Brahman, like that. That is also to account for whatever appears. Okay, all the appearances have to be accounted for. See, whenever we are talking about the reality in general, let us say, okay, you have a quest for truth. Many people say that, what do you want to do in life? Means, I want to find out the truth. Or even you go to a scientist also. Science also says that it is the study of truth or whatever. It's an exploration of truth, correct? So when we talk about the truth, broadly we have to first we have to at least talk about the truth of two things, correct? There is a subject and there is an objective world. The subject is encountering a world which is becoming evident one by one, different objects. So there is a subjective world, there is an objective world, or there is a subject and a subjective world, and there are many objects which form the objective world. Now, what is the truth of this objective world? So I think science is mostly concentrating on that, although they also try to study the subject also. Nowadays, even consciousness also, some of them want to study or try to understand. There are courses available even in big universities about this now. But still that they are trying to study the subject also objectively, which is a problem, I think. But this quest for truth means we should first try to understand these two, and then there is one more thing also comes into the picture. What if the subject and object are creations? Whether they are creation or not itself cannot be established in any manner. But if the subject and object are creations, then is there a creator? Okay. Is there a creator? Is there a karta? That also has to be analyzed. That also has to be explained away. Then there is also one more question. If we talk about a creator, what about the creator then? What is the swarupa of the creator? What is the nature of that creator? Is there a creator for the creator? Then it will become infinite regress, correct? Anavastha, it will become. So the creator has to be an uncreated creator. If creator is uncreated, why can't we take the world itself as uncreated? All these questions are there, correct? If you talk about a creator and say that creator is uncreated, then the obvious question some intelligent person will ask is what? Why should we not take the world itself as uncreated? Then we don't require any creator and all that, correct? In fact, this argument is not even a current argument. Understand that. The most orthodox Purva Mimamsakas, they don't accept Ishvara. They say, why should we even talk about Ishvara or the Creator or the Lord? We don't have to. They say everything is as it is. There can be Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, but that is also within creation only. Things are all the time getting created. They are there for some time and they are destroyed. All that is within the creation. But the creation as a whole is always like this. We don't require any creator. Even if you talk about creator, you will say that creator is uncreated. Then what is the big deal about this? But anyway, so if we purely talk about creation and the creator from Pratyaksha and Anumana, from perception and inference, we cannot arrive at any conclusion. Understand that. But anyway, the Veda and the Upanishads set out to teach us what is the truth about this world, about ourselves. And are there many truths? Is there only one truth? So here we accept the Veda as a valid means of knowledge for this. Veda is our pramana, like even for worldly affairs, perception, sense perception, and inference, and different types of inference. There is a one-step inference, two-step inference, and all that. And even comparison also sometimes we use. All these become valid means of knowledge. Similarly, the words of the Veda are valid means of knowledge. They are an independent means of knowledge and they reveal to us the truth about ourselves and this world. In fact, this truth cannot be known by any other means of knowledge. Only the Veda has to reveal it to us. Otherwise, you can have some assumptions, guesswork and all you can do, but that is not idle speculation. Understand that. For us, the study of Vedanta. In fact, that's why I don't like the word philosophy also. Many times say that people say he is teaching Advaita philosophy. Now, this philosophy is not our word. Understand that. Philosophy is a Western word. It has its own connotations. Many times philosophy means they are just thinking that it is some idle speculation. It is not speculation or guess or anything. Veda is a valid means of knowledge. We are studying Vedanta not for just some intellectual happiness or whatever, joy and all that. It is more than that. It is to solve your fundamental problem. It is to understand your own reality. In the process, there is a certain self transformation has to be there. Understand that. So it is about your identity. In fact, how much you are very sure that you are a human being right now. See, if I ask any of you who you are, then you are going to reel out so many things, correct? I am so and so, son or daughter of so and so. Like that, you have your own biography. There is no doubt in that, correct? It's a natural identity. But whether that natural identity itself is true or not has never been analyzed. It's called avichara siddha. There is no vichara into that. So we are right now, by reading this Upanishad, what are we doing? We are doing analysis into all those things. And what does the Upanishad say? Upanishad straight away bombs you with an equation, Tattvamasi. You are that. Okay. You means what? That means what in that? You, if anybody I call them as you or themselves as I, there is a normal meaning. Okay. Normal understanding is what? Somebody who is present in this body is you. So the body also can be taken as you, and the one who indwells in the body also is the one really addressed as you. But even there is no clarity whether the indweller is separate from the body. If you go to a scientist, they only talk about a physical body. In fact, many scientists are also known as monist or Advaitin. What kind of Advaitin they are? They are called material monist. Only matter is there, nothing else is there really. Everything else is only epiphenomenon. They use a word called epiphenomenon. So many people don't accept there is a mind, consciousness and all that. Those things are all simply some material processes. That's all. Or behavior. They explain everything away with behavior. Okay. So if you go to the modern some classes, even like in fact many of you are in lockdown and all this. Lots of online classes are there. Okay. Even on this, many universities have. So they are all trying to explain this intelligence in terms of behavior alone. But whether behavior alone really explains our, even as an individual, my experience of different things, the intelligence which I actually think I have, can it be only explained in terms of a behavior? So that is a big question. Okay, there is even a, they all talk about a Chinese room experiment. Okay, China is in the news a lot now, but there is also a Chinese room experiment they talk about. And that's an interesting thought experiment. So based on that, some people argue that intelligence is not just behavior or pattern matching. Okay, that if you give this input, you match it to some output and give it. That kind of pattern matching and that kind of behavior alone cannot constitute intelligence or understanding and all that knowledge. Knowledge is something more than that. It's not just pattern matching behavior. But those who are like very attached to artificial intelligence and all that, they talk about this. No, how do you even prove all those things? So there are two types of people. Some people, that's why I say artificial intelligence can never be really intelligence also. It is always only some. It is like saying that the weather forecast is the weather, or the weather simulation is the weather. You can simulate weather in a computer and do a forecast, but that simulation itself is not the real weather, correct? Like that some people argue, but of course others argue differently. So what I am trying to say here is there are a lot of speculations going on about all these things, and these speculations are nothing new. They are all there forever. People have been speculating about all these things. That's why our Shankaracharya, he says that Veda only has to come and resolve this. Veda, whatever Veda has revealed to us, that is what is knowledge for us in this case. Because all others are only fighting amongst each other. There is no, you cannot ascertain this is this based on simple sense perception or just arguing based on inference and logic. So here, this truth has to be revealed to us, and that truth only is getting revealed here in the form of an equation, where this equation simply blows away all the preconceptions you had about yourself, which again you took yourself for granted. That is the thing here. People take themselves for granted, and in fact most of our identity is all imposed on us, correct? Your parents call you with a name and you are so and so and all that. The child, in fact, children initially do not even have a proper sense of I, correct? They may even talk about themselves in third person and all that. Because initially that identity is like a third person only. Then it becomes first person identity. So this identity which we have in this life, and we don't know how many other lives, and which is there naturally, but which was never analyzed and arrived at, whether it is true or not. That's what we are analyzing here. So in this, the equation is what Upanishad is saying, you are that which is the cause of this entire world. Okay. So in this, everything is addressed. I told you, correct? If any, in our tradition, we call darshana. Okay, that which is showing you, revealing to you something. Any darshana has to talk about yourself, the world, and the creator, if there is one. So our Vedanta also is trying to address all these things and arrive at a truth of all these things. Okay, the truth of the world which is appearing, the truth of the one who is cognizing, and the truth of the creator of all these things. Now, Vedanta says there is a creator. Okay, there is no doubt about it. There is a creator who created this entire world. And in this world, your body, mind, sense complex is included. And there is a sense of I. There is an individual sense of I is there. Individual self. There is an individuality which I identify with. It's only an identification, understand that. Whether there is any truth in that, and what is truth also we have to define. In fact, one more fashionable argument is to say that there is no truth which you can define. Okay, truth can't be defined, truth can't be expressed in word. Of course, they will go to Upanishad itself for that. Okay, truth is a pathless land. Also, one person made it very famous by saying that you don't have to then do any vichara, I think, about truth. You can just sit if it is possible, that is. Just sitting is the most difficult thing, let me tell you. So, in fact, my guru, Swami Dayanandji, used to go in the US in the 80s. Okay, he used to go to different universities, give talks. He was just going around. And so before one of the talks, one scientist, I think, I don't know the identity exactly, so came and told Swamiji that you cannot define what is truth. Truth is not definable. That's a very fashionable argument, understand that. So Swamiji said, no, I can define what truth is to you. In fact, Swamiji need not define that. Shankara has already defined it. And the Shruti has already defined it. Satyam. Satyam is truth. No, but just giving a word is not enough, correct? So, Bhashyakara says, Yadrupena yen nischidam bhavati, tadrupena tannam vyabhicharati, tat satyam. So, whatever you ascertain as this, as of some nature, that which never changes from that, correct? That which never changes its nature in all three periods of time. Or to put it in a simple language, that which can never be negated at any time. That is truth. That which you can never negate, that which never changes. If you have ascertained it as this, of this nature, it is always of that nature, it never changes. Correct? That is truth. That's how Bhashyakara defines it beautifully in more than one place, in Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, in Taittiriya Bhashya particularly, whatever I quoted. So on hearing this, then that person accepted, yes, this definition cannot be really broken. We can accept this definition, okay? That which can never be negated in all periods of time alone is truth, correct? If it is negated, means it becomes false, correct? But then the other question is there. What is that? Okay, you have given some definition, but there is nothing like that. There is no truth. You have defined it. But what is this truth? Is there anything like that which fulfills your definition? Okay. So that person came next day and said this. Okay. First day he heard the definition. Then I think he thought over all night. That's my imagination from the story. He could not break the definition. So he came the next day. What did he say? He said that, yes, Swamiji, I accept your definition, but there is no truth like that. Can you teach me? Can you show me what that truth is? And Swamiji said, yes, I can show you. Wait for my next lecture or something. He would have said, I think, big Swamiji being Swamiji. But see, once you get into all these things, this suspense is not tolerable, correct? You cannot tolerate suspense. No, you tell me immediately, is there any truth? Can you teach me that? Then Swamiji told what Swamiji would have told. Swamiji would have told, see, you can negate everything, correct? You can negate the entire world, Maya. It's all only appearance. In fact, most scientists know that it is all Maya, correct? What you call a solid, liquid and all that, it's all only names and names and names. Names in names. Okay. Namni, namani. Like that, when my Guruji used to say always. Only names and names. You say pot. But pot is clay. That is name in name. Then what is clay? Clay is only molecules. Molecules are only atoms. Atoms are only particles. Like that, you can keep on giving different names. And then once you go to a certain quantum level, every 99% is space. Then what is all this which is appearing here? You are talking about solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and one more also they have found out now. Okay, one more state of matter, very if it is very near to the absolute freezing point. Okay, what are all these things then? In space, the nucleus is only occupying very little, and the electron clouds are going around that at a particle level or atomic level, let us say, and so yes. So what is all this appearance? All Maya only, correct? You cannot explain how did all these particles get together. Only few fundamental blocks are there, and then they have produced this great world, macro level world. It is Maya. Everything is only appearance. Very easy to say. But then the important thing where everything we miss out is what? Who is the one who is negating? That is what we are trying to learn here. Understand? The nature of that negator. The negator can never be negated. Negator can negate everything else. Okay. The negator can negate everything else. Neti neti. Okay. Upanishadisal does that. If you read Brihadaranyaka, neti neti is a very famous statement. This is not, this is not. Not this, not this. Anything as an object. Okay. Anything as an object is not this. Okay. So not this, we can say. All these are only appearances. Like that we can say. But then what about the negator? The negator can never be negated. Even if you talk about vacuum, physical vacuum and all that, who is cognizing that? The cognizer of that can never be negated. So like this, that is the important thing we have to understand. We have to understand that we are actually trying to understand the nature of that negator. And finally, we have to arrive at the fact that since the negator alone can never be negated, negator is Satyam. The very nature of that negator is nothing but the truth. That is the truth. Okay. So, that is something very important we have to understand. So, this is the teaching actually. So, you have to analyze yourself. Okay. Analyze and arrive at the truth about yourself. But it is like this: how can the subject know itself? Eyes can see everything else, but how can the eyes see itself? Means we cannot. Eyes cannot see itself because it is the eternal subject. You are also the eternal subject, but then how do I know? Okay, I can arrive at certain truth that I am the conscious being who is conscious of all the objects, and in this objective world, even my body, my mind, and even my thoughts are all included, because I'm able to, the thoughts are getting evident to me. Everything is becoming evident to me. I am the conscious being to whom everything is becoming evident, including my thoughts, emotions, everything is becoming evident to me. So I am only this conscious being. But are there many conscious beings? What is this conscious being limited only to this body? Still questions are there. So that is why we need another pramana, a means of knowledge. Like to see the eyes, you have to go and stand in front of a mirror. To know ourselves, we have to stand in front of the Shruti. Shruti is a word mirror. The Veda is a word mirror which is just showing to us our nature. And the Guru is showing to you that mirror. Correct? And our Upanishads are all only mirror only. They are all showing to you who you are. And Ganesha himself is a manifestation of that. That teaching itself, direct manifestation which you can see every day. The teaching of Tattvamasi. So the Upanishads are saying, you as a conscious being is not separate from the conscious being which is the creator of this entire world. There is only one consciousness. The consciousness never becomes an object of consciousness, correct? Consciousness is self-revealing, self-existent. That is why if I ask you, are you there? You don't have to use any means of knowledge to say I am there. You are there. So consciousness means there is only one consciousness. There are many sentient beings, but that doesn't mean there are many consciousnesses, because always you are only objectifying bodies. You are never objectifying another consciousness, understand? So the consciousness can never be known as another object. So here again, analogies are all given in teaching. Even in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan says, like even there is one sun which is illumining all the suns which are getting reflected all over, correct? All the light is coming only from one sun, although it looks like it is coming from many places. Likewise, there is only one consciousness. And that conscious, Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi, he says. I am the one who is the Kshetrajnaha in every Kshetra. Kshetra here means this all the bodies, you can say, correct? I am the one who is lighting up. There is only one consciousness. That is the teaching. That same consciousness, if you look at it from one standpoint, from the standpoint of the world, that is the creator of the world, all-knowing, all-pervading, all-powerful. The same consciousness, you look at it from another standpoint, the individual body, mind, sense complex. It's only purely how you look at it. You look at the ocean. Ocean is water. But water looked at from one standpoint is ocean. You look at wave. You look at wave. Wave also is water. So water looked at from another standpoint is wave. But as water, there is identity. There is only one water. The nature of the individual self is not separate from the nature of the creator. In fact, this individuality or the status of being creator, all this is adhyaropa. That's how I started, correct? It's all adhyaropa only. It's a deliberate superimposition. Finally, the teaching is what? There is only one consciousness, which is the invariable in every cognition. The objects of cognition come and go. They are all mithya. They are all only appearances. They don't have any existence of their own. They are all names in names in names. And finally, it will again come back to only the conscious observer. The consciousness is the basis for both the subject and object. There is only one reality which is sustaining the subject-object appearance. Okay, the appearance of the subject is co-equal with the appearance of the object, correct? If there is no object, there is no status of being subject also, but the consciousness or the conscious being is always there, whether there is a subject-object division or not. Okay, because consciousness still no, I did not know anything. It's always knowing only. That is why that nature of that consciousness never changes. It is the only thing, once you have ascertained yourself as a conscious being, that can never change in any period of time. Even time itself is innate only. Time itself becomes evident to you, space-time. And space-time is there and it is not there in another state. Even individuality, we as though the waking individuality, everybody takes very seriously. But that individuality comes and goes. You lose that individuality every night. In dream, in fact, you can take totally a different individuality. You can even become an animal in dream. I don't know. I have not at least become animal in my dreams before. But some people can, correct? But you can have a different identity. A king can become a beggar, or a beggar can become a king. So don't, so this individuality, whatever you have taken for granted, the waking individuality, is something which comes and goes. It cannot be called truth, ultimate truth, or whatever. Whatever is there, unchanging, once you have ascertained this is this, it should never change in any period of time. Invariable. That alone is truth, that which can never be negated. And that truth, from an individual standpoint also, that truth resolves into a conscious being. What about the world, the total? From the total standpoint also, it resolves into the same consciousness. That's what the Veda is teaching. The Upanishad is the only means of knowledge to know that. Upanishad comes and says, hey, that cause of everything, okay, is also a conscious being. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam. But the same thing you know in your own Buddhi Guha. Okay. In your own body, mind, sense complex also, the same consciousness is lighting up that. And every time you say I, you are only referring to that really. All other I's are really objects of consciousness, correct? How can an object be I? Whatever I see is not I. Okay, that is the very, very simple razor we have to use. Okay, because we are having all false identifications at many levels. Keep using this razor. Shave off all those identities always. Whatever I see is not I. Whatever I see is not I. I am always the seer, the conscious being, to whom everything is becoming evident. So that's why, as an extreme example of this, my guru used to say, this is something all of you should internalize. In fact, what he used to say is, the worldly logic is that I know sorrow. Okay, I know I am in sorrow. Therefore, I am sorrowful. But Vedanta is telling you, I know sorrow. Therefore, I am not sorrow, or I am not sorrowful. Correct? Because I am the knower of sorrow also. So sorrow is not really in me or anything. It is just an object only. It's a state of mind maybe, but that state of mind also is being cognized by me. I am the consciousness to whom that state of mind is becoming evident. I am that consciousness alone. The state of mind comes and goes. It is not me or anything. It does not really concern me, in fact. Or it does not change me in any way. I am always the conscious being to whom everything becomes evident. Okay. So that is the thing. So this particular truth has to be understood clearly, but also it requires to be repeated, this insight, because the other identity is so strong. So it takes sometimes for the self-transformation to take place. So this teaching has to be also repeated Keep listening to the same thing again and again. Once the teaching is clear, also keep recollecting it. How long? Till the time, how naturally now you before the understanding Vedanta, how naturally you thought you are a human being. Similarly, you have to have that natural identity, Aham Brahmasmi. Till then, you have to repeat. You have to continue. It can be first time you hear the teaching itself, it works out for some people. For somebody, it may take lifetimes. So there is no, we cannot say each person is different. From where they start is different. But that is the teaching, that you are the limitless. You are the cause of this entire world. So with this one equation, Vedanta is actually revealing everything, or it is accounting for everything. The status of being a creator is deliberately superimposed on one consciousness. And the status of being this individual also is a superimposition. So first we talk about these superimpositions, we deliberately do, and then we say both are same. But it is obviously contradictory, apparently contradictory. Then the apparent contradiction is resolved by negating all the superimpositions. Because whatever appears, whatever changes is negated. And the invariable conscious being alone is the truth. So that is what is revealed here. And Ganapati's Rupa is a direct representation of that. We saw already. The human part of the body represents the individual. The Gajamukha, the elephant face, they give a very interesting derivation. Gaha, Jaha, Gascha, Jascha, Iti Gajaha. So the Gaja is actually representative of Jagat Karanam Brahma. The cause of this entire world, Brahman, comes from the two words Ga and Ja. So Ga represents the Avyakta or unmanifest, and from that unmanifest, whatever is born, okay, Jayante iti Jaha. Gachanti iti Gaha means everything goes or resolves into that is Ga. And again from that resolved state of undifferentiated, unmanifest being, whatever is born, Jayante iti Jaha, Gascha, Jascha, Gajaha. So this Gajamukha represents the Jagat Karanam Brahma. And both are there in one form, meaning that is the Asi. Means Ganesha represents Tattvamasi, teaching right in front of your eyes. Directly you can cognize. Every time you look at Ganesha, this only the meaning of this Mahavakya has to come to you. Correct? That's why Ganesha Rupa is very special. Those who are Ganesha Bhaktas, they say that even Shiva, Vishnu and all is not same. Shiva, Vishnu may represent certain things, their forms, but they do not represent the Tattvamasi teaching, at least. Like this, they feel. They even talk about it. That's okay. So, Ganesha is a Omkara Swarupa, but also the one who is a representation of this teaching. Then what? So then this Upanishad goes into this Tattvam Asi, correct, is further explained here. It is further analyzed, or in more detail it is looked at, correct. So the Upanishad goes and says, Tvame Vakevalam Kartasi. So you are the Karta. Now Karta, Bhokta, the individual can be also taken as a Karta and Bhokta, correct. You are the doer, okay. You are the enjoyer as an individual. So in every individual, you are the doer. So you can say that this is talking about the Tvam-pada. But Kevala Pada also is there in between. Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi, Kevalam Dhartasi, Kevalam Hartasi, Kevalam. So what is this Kevalam? There is even a Kaivalya Upanishad. Kevalasya Bhavaha Kaivalyam. And Kevala has a very derogatory meaning in some language, Indian languages like Tamil. Tamil Kevalam means something which is like very bad or worse. Is called Kevalam. I don't know how that came about in the language. But Kevalam means, here we have to understand, this Kevala Shabda is used in the Upanishad itself. That which is there by itself. Okay. Or Kutastha also, sometimes we say. See, that which is there unchanging. Kute tishtati iti kutasthaha. Like that also there is a word. See, the anvil. If you go to a blacksmithy place, the anvil is there. Okay, so everything is kept on the anvil and it is beaten and different shapes are made, things are made, but the anvil remains as it is. It doesn't change its shape or anything. Like that, so many things are happening. Everything is changing here in the objective world. The conscious being is like the anvil. It is there as it is without any change. That Kevala Shabda points out that. So if you look at it even more deeply, see, even in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan always puts some contradictions in every verse, apparent contradictions. Okay. So he says, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. Okay, fine. Then what? He says, Tasya Kartaram Api Mam Vidya Akartaram Avyayam. So if Ganesha is the Karta, he is the doer. Means doers are all the time changing. They are doing something. They are in activity. Then are you saying Ganesha changes? Then Ganesha is no more the truth. If Ganesha keeps changing, means even though I am the doer, he says, in reality I am not doing anything. Akartaram, Avyayam, unchanging, and I am not the doer. But I am the doer from one standpoint. From the standpoint of the Srishti, I am the doer. From my own standpoint, I am not doing anything really. Everything is only an appearance. In my presence, all these things are appearing. Okay, it appears like it is all happening. Everybody is doing things. Everybody is enjoying. It's all only appearance. It's all appearing in my presence. In the presence of consciousness alone, all these things are appearing. So even though Ganesha is the Karta, but Ganesha Swarupa, if you see, it is Kevala. It doesn't change. It is unchanging. In fact, in reality, Ganesha is not Karta. So, Tvameva Kevalam Kartasi. You are the doer in every upadhi, in every body, mind, sense complex. You can take like that. Or you can also consider you are the Karta of the entire Srishti also here. But still you are Kevala. Similarly, Tvameva Kevalam Dhartasi. Dharta means the one who nourishes, supports, sustains. So Ganesha only is sustaining, because the very existence of this, all these things, correct? All the appearances have to, their very existence they are borrowing. They are only having borrowed existence. Like even the snake which is appearing on the rope, Snake has no existence of its own. It's only borrowing the existence of the rope, we have to say. Or even pot does not, it's only a name and form. What exists is clay. But even clay also, if you analyze further, there is no clay, only molecules are existing. Like that, it's all borrowed existence. Names and forms, names and forms, names and forms. None of this are really having any substance. The only substance is Brahman. That itself is existence. So, in fact, language is faulty. We say existent pot as though existence is an adjective. In reality, everything is an adjective of existence. Potty existence, clayey existence, like that we have to say. Existence alone is. These names and forms are all only appearances. They are also, in reality, they cannot be even called qualities really. It's only appearances, we have to say. So, you are the one who is sustaining by giving your own existence to all these things. All the differentiated appearances are appearing only in you, correct? But you are not affected by any of these appearances. Again, Kevalam. So many things are appearing, but it's all only appearance. Nothing changes. You remain as you are. And Tvameva Kevalam Hartasi. You are also the Harta, Harati. So you are the one who takes away all this differentiated world also. So the differentiated world becomes undifferentiated. Everything resolves. And even when everything resolves, you are the same. Correct? Before this creation came also, the same conscious being was there. Even while the creation is there, the same conscious being is there. Even when the creation is resolved back, it becomes potential. Same conscious being alone is there. That alone is there. That alone is. The is word can only be used with reference to that. All others are only appearances. It's all only appearance. Names, forms, function also is there. Only a pot form can hold water, correct? It is functional. But even then it has no reality of itself. The weight of the pot is weight of clay. If you touch the pot, you are really touching the clay. Clay alone is there really. The pot is only name and form. And there are names and names and names like this. We can keep reducing it further. And it will resolve into Ganesha only. Because it will finally resolve into the conscious being. Whether you do an objective analysis or a subjective analysis, you have to come to the same place. And that is the Swarupa of Ganesha, who represents this teaching, correct? Tattvamasi. So his very form is a representation of all these things. The human body is the individual Tvam, and the Gajamukha is the Tatpada. It is the cause of this entire world, and they are one and the same in one Rupa. So having talked about here this Tvampada, you can say, as the Karta, then now it goes to the Tatpada. Tvameva Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmasi. So this Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma itself is actually a Chandogya Upanishad is there. Okay, this Vakya is famous. from Chandogya. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma Tad Jalan Shanta Upasita. That is the actual Vakya in Chandogya. It is part of actually Upasana. But even there, interestingly, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, everything that which is here, Khalu is only a particle. Okay. Indeed, like that, it has a meaning, I think. So everything here, indeed, is Brahman. Sarvam Idam. Everything here. Everything means everything. In fact, the Upanishad later on keeps on going into all the things. When we say everything, it can be looked upon in many ways, correct? Subject, object, waker, dream, or waking, dream, sleep. Then gross, subtle, causal. Like that, we can keep on look at it in different ways. Or you can look at it in a 5-elemental model. Or you can look at it in Triguna model, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. Like that, n number of classification, categorization is possible. Whichever way you categorize, everything that is here is Brahman. Tat Jalaniti, Shanta Upasita. Tat Jalan means what? It's an interesting meaning Bhashyakara gives in Chandogya Bhashya. Tat Jam, from that only everything is born. Tat Jam. Okay. Then Tallam, there only everything resolves back. Tajjam Tallam. Okay. And then An is there, correct? Tajjalan means means Aniti, Praniti. So because of that only everything is also sustained or everything is living. So Tajjalan, like that there is a word in the Upanishad. So Bhashyakara gives a meaning like this. Tajjam Tallam Aniti, Praniti, Iti Tajjalan, like that. Interesting meaning for that word. And that you then do upasana of that being Shanta, okay? Being the one who is Shanta without any other worries, okay? Peacefully you do this upasana. Everything that is here is Brahman alone. And that Brahman, even that teaching also is you only. Correct? Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma means in Ganesha Rupa, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma also we can see there. Because Ganesha Rupa includes the individual in the form of the human body. Or some people say even that huge paunch is a representation of Brahmanda. Everything is there in Ganesha only. Sarva Karana. Or the Gajamukha also. Gajaha we already saw. So Ganesha represents the individual, Ganesha represents the total, and Ganesha represents the creator of the total also. In whichever way you look at it, Ganesha represents all that is here as Brahman. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahmasi Tvameva. So your Rupa alone also teaches us that everything that is here is only one, that Brahman. That Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma alone is there as all this. From that only everything is born. From that only everything is also, to that only everything resolves. And that alone is also sustaining everything. Tat Jalaniti. So that also, as you can say, in one way, these three Vakyas before also is leading to this. Correct? So you can say Tajjam, Tallam, Aniti, Praniti, like that. This three Vakyas before this also is pointing to that. So here, everything that is here is only this one reality, and you are a representation of that, visual representation. Again, that is the important thing. So Ganesha visually represents that teaching. And you are also Tvam Sakshad Atmasi Nityam. You are the very Atma of all these things. Here the Asi comes into the picture. You are the very self of everything here, always. Okay, so that is the truth. So this teaching is presented at the beginning of this Upanishad. Okay. Then it goes into other things, more of Upasana and all that. Also, in between also there are other, most of the important Upanishad Lakshanas are also there. The words which are used as revealing words to reveal the truth. All that will come here. In between, prayers are there. Then Upasana also is there. A mantra is also revealed. Using that mantra, you can do japa, upasana. So all that we'll see as we go forward. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
धन्यवाद जी.
धन्यवाद.
धन्यवाद गुरुजी. One doubt, जी.
Yeah, tell me.
This idam shabda normally denotes this, right? Here it is denoting as here, is it?
Yeah, here or this, both you can say. Something which is nearby.
Okay.
Time wise it is here. Space wise it is this.
Oh, okay. 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 Okay, जी. धन्यवाद.